I woke up to a miracle today. Triggers stay as I find my way. No judgment to lead astray. In this peaceful state I'll stay.
We are jumping right into an exploration of what might be one of the most provocative and maybe one of the most misunderstood lessons in the entire workbook.
It's a big one.
We're focusing on lesson 320, My Father gives all power unto me.
And that title is, it's a lightning rod, isn't it? The mind just immediately translates it into the language of the ego.
Right. It thinks of control.
The ability to manipulate circumstances, to make other people do what I want, to fix everything I think is broken, or, just to guarantee my life runs exactly according to my personal plans.
And that type of power, that ego power, by its very definition, is temporary. It's limited.
Always. It constantly runs up against forces it can't control.
Things like time, gravity, the free will of other people, entropy. It relies on all these external variables. And as soon as those shift, that power just evaporates.
So this exploration is really about distinguishing that fragile external kind of control from the true power the lesson is actually describing.
Which is something else entirely.
True power is when we stop trying to force outcomes.
So our mission today is to look at what this inherent, unassailable power actually means in practice. How can we recognize it, especially when daily life feels so defined by limitation and, frankly, by struggle?
To start, let's just hear the lesson itself. Lesson 320. My Father gives all power unto me.
The Son of God is limitless. There are no limits on his strength, his peace, his joy, nor any attributes his Father gave in his creation. What he wills with his Creator and Redeemer must be done.
His holy will can never be denied, because his Father shines upon his mind and lays before it all the strength and love in earth and heaven.
I am he to whom all this is given. I am he in whom the power of my Father's will abides.
Your will can do all things in me, and then extend to all the world as well through me. There is no limit on your will, and so all power has been given to your Son.
Okay, so let's address the immediate tension right out of the gate. I think it's the massive gap we all feel.
The cognitive gap.
You read, all power has been given to your Son. And then you immediately contrast that with your current reality. You look at the credit card statement, you turn on the news, you see the political chaos. Limitless power is the last thing we seem to possess.
And that cognitive dissonance is perfectly normal. I mean, the resistance we feel is rooted in who we think we are.
Right.
If I identify as a vulnerable body with a very limited lifespan, struggling to pay bills in what feels like a hostile world, then the idea of having all power isn't just unbelievable. It can almost feel like an insult.
What the lesson is pointing to, then, is this fundamental fact of our identity. It says the Son of God is limitless. The power is given to what we actually are.
That's the whole key. Our suffering comes from identifying with a separate self, a false identity, which is inherently defined by scarcity, by limits, and by vulnerability.
So when we operate from that separate self, it's like we're trying to fit this infinite gift, all power, into a fragile, finite container.
The container can't hold it. The ego self-concept, it just can't comprehend it. Or rather, it insists on defining that power in its own limited, controlling terms.
So our identification with this false, limited self acts as the block. It's what stops us from experiencing what the lesson says is already true. Which leads us into another major area we have to address, a huge spiritual pitfall here. Because of the common egoic understanding of power, it's incredibly easy to interpret Lesson 320 as some sophisticated form of prosperity gospel or, a manifestation technique.
Yes. The thought process goes something like this. Okay, if I align myself with this limitless power, I can finally manifest wealth, perfect health, the ideal partner, and total control over my destiny.
I will use God's power to perfect my individual, separate life in conventional terms.
And this is such a critical misinterpretation. It fundamentally mistakes the purpose of the power. The power isn't given to the ego to help it escape the consequences of its own system. The power is given to the Son of God to help him wake up from the dream of separateness entirely.
if the goal were just to perfect our individual life, to have a better house, a better job, an unaging body, then the power would still be finite. It would be tied to the laws of the physical world.
And it would ultimately fail. What's more, it would just confirm the ego's core belief that individual existence is real and that it's worth perfecting.
The true purpose is the recognition of our real nature as God's Son. Limitless, whole, fundamentally safe, and invulnerable, regardless of the circumstances.
The power is for seeing past the ego's entire framework of struggle and scarcity and fear. Its use is purely for perceptual correction. It's for forgiveness.
When we're applying this power correctly, we're not measuring its success by whether our bank account increased.
Or whether a traffic light turned green at the perfect moment. We measure it by the depth of our inner stability, the consistency of our peace, and our ability to choose forgiveness instead of judgment when we're challenged.
I think an example of this contrast is so crucial here. You could look at a person who's facing bankruptcy or a severe health crisis where all the external markers suggest failure and powerlessness.
Right. On the surface, it looks like a disaster.
But if that person can look upon that crisis without fear, if their inner peace remains completely uncompromised, that person is demonstrating the limitless strength of Lesson 320.
Conversely, we so often see people who have achieved the highest conventional success, massive wealth, public adoration, control over corporations, but who are internally terrified.
Anxious, constantly defensive, driven by this need for more and more.
Their outward power is just this thin, fragile veneer over a core of crippling vulnerability. They are completely at the mercy of the world's changing judgment.
This really forces us to abandon the practice of judging ourselves or others by appearance. The experience of true power is entirely an inward state. It's a function of identity, not a function of external control or accumulation.
So we can't assess who has it and who doesn't based on worldly success.
And that's incredibly freeing because it means that the achievement of this power isn't dependent on solving all our external problems first.
It's available right now. In the midst of whatever difficulties we perceive ourselves to be facing, the chaos actually becomes the perfect classroom for its recognition.
So let's turn to the core text again, which details the content of this power. It says, "The Son of God is limitless. There are no limits on his strength, his peace, his joy, nor any attributes his Father gave in his creation."
This is a direct correction of our core belief system. The world teaches us that we are defined by limitation, by vulnerability, and by sorrow.
And the lesson asserts that strength, peace, and joy are not things we earn or achieve. They are attributes that were given in our creation. They define what we are, permanently.
We should probably dissect what those attributes mean in a spiritual context versus a worldly one.
Let's do that. Take strength, for instance. Worldly strength often means rigidity, resistance, the ability to withstand pressure by pushing back, or maybe the ability to endure suffering without complaint.
Spiritual strength is the opposite of that. It is the strength of non-resistance. It's an invulnerability born of the recognition that nothing external can fundamentally touch or diminish your being.
You're not strong because you can fight hard. You're strong because you are unassailable.
Exactly. And if you are truly unassailable, what need is there to fight? This spiritual strength allows for flexibility, for vulnerability, for presence, because there is no underlying existential panic driving your actions. And then there's peace. The world defines peace as the absence of conflict. It's a temporary lull between wars or arguments. It's entirely situational.
But spiritual peace is the presence of God. It's the fundamental state of unity. It's the condition of being whole, which cannot be broken by external noise or conflict.
If external conflict appears, worldly peace is immediately shattered. But spiritual peace, the kind derived from this lesson's strength, holds fast.
The power is the recognition that the conflict exists only in the dream, but your reality remains untouched. This allows you to stand in the storm without being carried away by it.
And finally, joy. Worldly joy is dependent on outcomes, on having something desirable, a new purchase, a romantic success, a good meal.
It's fleeting, it's subject to reversal, and it's often followed by a crash.
Spiritual joy is the natural state of being whole and loved. It's not dependent on what happens, it's dependent on what you are.
So the lesson corrects this idea that limitation defines us. When we feel overwhelmed or small or sorrowful, we have to recognize that this feeling is a temporary symptom of identifying with a false self-concept.
The reality of our limitless nature remains constant. Nothing can diminish what we are. No failure, no loss, no physical pain, no criticism.
And that recognition provides the ultimate anchor. The temporary nature of worldly suffering, the transient identity of the body, none of it can touch the eternal reality of the Son of God.
The power described here is simply this affirmation of reality.
Okay, we really need practical examples of interrupting the ego's limited script.
Yes, let's ground this.
I can share an example involving physical difficulty. As I've mentioned, I engage in physical labor, and there are days when my body just screams limitations. My knees ache constantly, my back is sore, and this overall fatigue settles in.
What are the specific components of the story the ego constructs in those moments?
It's never just about the ache in the knee. The story becomes, I am getting older, and my body is breaking down. I am less valuable, less capable. I made bad choices by taking this physical path.
Wow.
Soon I will be useless, relying on others, and unable to continue the work I love. The physical sensation is immediately translated into evidence of my total inevitable limitation and vulnerability.
And that narrative drastically compounds the suffering. You move from experiencing a physical sensation to experiencing intense emotional suffering about your entire future.
It turns a sore knee into evidence of a defective existence.
And I imagine you feel panic underneath that discomfort. The pain is no longer just pain. It's a symbol of your inherent defectiveness and the scarcity of time you have left.
That's it. And this compounded suffering leads to tension, defensiveness.
So when the recognition of Lesson 320 is applied, the recognition that all power has been given to the Son, how does that mental shift interrupt this narrative without resorting to, suppressing or denying the physical facts?
The interruption begins by just noticing the story. I catch the thought, I'm getting older and breaking down, and then I pause. I deliberately step back from identifying with that thought. The specific mental technique is separation. The physical discomfort is a real sensation, but the story about my impending collapse is a fabrication based on fear.
So you separate the sensation from the story.
Right. The practice is to allow the sensation to be present without letting it define me. I'll declare silently or internally. What I actually am cannot be diminished or limited by this physical discomfort. My strength, my peace, and my joy are limitless attributes given in my creation. They are not dependent on the functioning of this body.
And what's the practical result of that separation? I mean, you still have a sore back, so how is the power manifested?
The power manifests as unpanicked presence. The suffering lessens immediately because I've removed that layer of fear and regret. I'm no longer fighting my body or using the discomfort as an excuse for internal misery.
The sensation might remain.
The sensation might remain, but the tension against the sensation is removed. I move from a feeling of victimhood to one of responsibility.
So now you can actually take care of the body.
Exactly. I can do what's needed, ice, stretching, rest. But the care is born of love and clarity, not panic about my demise. I'm addressing the body's needs without confusing the body's state with my identity. That stability, that freedom from existential panic, that is the limitless strength described in the lesson.
That is a profound clarification.
Yeah.
Spiritual strength isn't the ability to make the pain disappear.
Yeah.
It's the ability to hold the pain without letting the pain hold you captive.
Yes.
And the effect of this inner shift must extend outwardly. It addresses that point that the power extends to all the world as well.
It absolutely does. When I'm caught in the story, identified with the breaking body, I'm irritable, I'm closed off. But when I rest in the recognition of my unassailable nature, I become present, open.
And that same pattern applies perfectly to relational dynamics, which is often where the ego's demand for control is most exposed.
Yeah.
I can use the example of managing children, particularly during moments of high stress.
Like rushed mornings.
Exactly. Rushed mornings. In that situation, the external circumstances, the clock ticking, the demands of the day, they put massive pressure on the illusion of your individual control.
It's the perfect storm for the ego.
It is. I experience a child having a meltdown, and my thought process is, I must force this outcome. They must be calm. They must be moving. We must be on time.
Otherwise, I am a failure as a parent.
That's it. My voice sharpens, my body tenses, and I force ego power, and that always escalates the situation. It just makes the child more resistant.
That moment is a perfect illustration of the illusion of power. You're operating from the belief that external factors, the child's behavior, the clock, must bend to your separate will. The use of force confirms your lack of true power.
So the practice starts with catching that pattern. I notice the sharpness in my voice, the internal urgency, the tightening in my chest, and I have to recognize I am attempting to force an external outcome. The choice of Lesson 320 is to stop asserting my will over the situation. I remain present in the chaos, but the urgency drops away.
The mind changes.
It does. It recognizes that my peace is not dependent on whether the child is wearing the correct socks or whether we leave on time. The power is the ability to choose non-reaction.
So you shift from trying to control the external variables to choosing your internal state, which is the only thing you actually have unlimited power over.
And the moment I choose peace, the situation's meaning changes. I stop reading the moment through my own fear, and I start seeing the child's actual distress. Rather than seeing them as an obstacle disrupting my schedule, my perception clears.
And you're no longer contributing your own panic to the shared space.
Exactly. That clarity allows for a genuine response, empathy, patience, simple help, instead of a fearful reaction. By choosing peace, I am not magically controlling my child's behavior, but I am removing a layer of fear from the space between us.
When we attempt to control a situation, we need to ask ourselves, am I acting from strength, from my unassailable identity, or am I acting from fear, from the desire to defend my separate status?
The act of control is always rooted in fear. It always confirms the belief in limitation. True power is demonstrated by the ability to let go, to wait without panic, and to trust that the unified will is already being accomplished. And bringing this to a conclusion requires looking at the ultimate guarantee. The lesson states, His holy will can never be denied.
This is the foundation of the Son's limitless power. When we align with that will, which again is our true will, the purpose of healing and awakening gets accomplished inevitably.
Which means the outcome is certain, but the form it takes may not align with our ego's preferences.
That's a huge point. The guarantee of the holy will is not that our individual life will be comfortable. The guarantee is that we will awaken to our true identity.
And sometimes the very events that serve awakening look exactly like powerlessness from the ego's perspective. They look like loss, failure, illness, or things falling apart.
And the ego cries, I'm helpless.
But those very events, the moments where our control fails, absolutely, might be exactly what forces us to relinquish our reliance on false power.
We're compelled to look inward and recognize the strength that cannot be threatened by external collapse.
The collapse of the separate self is the prerequisite for recognizing the limitless self.
So working with Lesson 320 means noticing the moments we are trying to control, manipulate, or force outcomes.
And in that pause, we remember the lesson. All power is already given to the Son of God. And if that power is strength, peace, and joy, then our goal is simply to be still and allow those attributes to be extended through us.
The recognition of this power happens in small daily moments. The pause before reacting to traffic, the choice of non-judgment when you're criticized, the acceptance of physical pain without building a dramatic story around it.
These small recognitions slowly dismantle the entire edifice of the separate self. The power is real, it's infinite, and it's entirely available. But its demonstration is always internal. It is the unshakable certainty of our unified self.
So to summarize our exploration of Lesson 320, the power described is not egoic control or the ability to manipulate external reality for personal gain. It is the unconditional, limitless strength, peace, and joy inherent in our nature as God's Son.
And this power has already been given in creation. Our practice is one of recognition, not acquisition. We stop blocking our awareness of it by relinquishing the separate self and its constant demands for control, allowing the unified will to flow through us unhindered.
And we have to stop judging the presence of this power by external appearances. by wealth or health or control over circumstance. Its presence is demonstrated entirely through the unwavering inner state of peace we can maintain in the face of apparent chaos or limitation.
That is the foundation of the limitless sun. And we invite you to consider this thought as you move through your day. What small assertion of separate control can you relinquish right now, in this moment, to allow the already given limitless power of your true identity to shine through?
Thank you for joining us for this exploration.
Thank you for practicing with us.
We love hearing your observations as you work with these lessons, especially those moments when the recognition of limitless strength cuts through the belief in limitation.